This is the Adopted Mom Podcast. Adoption may look different for each family, but we need solidarity from other crazy people who took this leap. And that is what we do here. We encourage, we build up, we share the wins and losses. We lean on each other, and we get through this together. Thanks for joining us. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the last episode of Season 3. That's so exciting. And before we talk about this episode, I just want to thank everyone who has been a guest on the show and who has listened to the show and rated and reviewed this season. And we got to launch an email list, and that was super fun. And we're going to keep that going. And there's going to be more about that in the actual episode part. But I just want to thank you guys. This has been a really fun ride. I can't believe that I've gotten to do this for over a year now, 3 seasons in, and we're launching season 4 in February. I can't believe that this is real life, that I get to do this and that I get to showcase some awesome adoptive moms and other adoption characters with you guys. And the feedback I've gotten is just so encouraging. I'm such a words of affirmation person. And so I just thrive on hearing that my episodes from my little podcast are impacting your life. It means so much to me. So thank you again. Just thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing all of it. Thanks for making this possible for 3 whole seasons. That's, 45 episodes? Good grief, you guys. And we have a bonus episode coming too, just to get you through that break. I know that it's a good break for me, but it's hard because I miss putting out new episodes and I miss communicating with you guys, and we're going to try to keep that going. This last episode is a really special one. I'm excited to share it with you guys. It's with a whole bunch of people. It's actually 4 mamas, Meg Meredith, Baxter, Madi, Hutson, and Kayla Crowe, and they're all connected by a sibling group that they collectively adopted. So that's really neat. They've made it a priority for their families to stick together, and they've kind of formed like a new family community, and they're going to talk about that and why it's important and how they make it work. Obviously, that's a lot of people, so we were not able to record here in my home studio, but we did record in Red Barn Studio. Now, I've talked about them before because we recorded another panel interview there, but Jason with Red Barn is so awesome, and we took some pictures there, so definitely go back to the show notes at theadoptivemompodcast.com to check those out. If you are in the area, especially, but anywhere, and you have recording needs of any kind, music, podcast, whatever, you're definitely going to want to hit Jason up with Red Barn Studio. He does consultation even if you're not in the area and you can't make it here, but he travels and he has people come from all over to record with him. Super personal, super personable as well. And I don't know, I just can't recommend them enough. They've been so great to work with my podcast, and we wouldn't have been able to record several of these episodes without having that space. So thank you so much, Jason. Before we jump in, I want to remind you to rate, review, and subscribe. That is so important for helping this podcast get into more ears. So if you enjoy the podcast, just take a second and rate and review. You can do it while you listen. It'll be entirely painless, I promise. I think that's it. So with all that said, I'm a little sad to quit this recording because that means that it's done until February. But with all that said, let's jump into my interview with all those women. So we are used to talking about non-biological family members here on the podcast, but this episode is going to be a little bit different. We have a really interesting non-biological family in that it's super extended. So with me, I have 4 women who collectively have adopted 5 children, right? Mm-hmm. That's crazy. So I want you to take a second and introduce yourselves, and then we're going to get into how all this works. So I'm going to start here with Meg. So tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into adoption.
So my name's Meg Meredith, and I'm married to Kyle, and we have 2 kids, and one's biological and one is adopted, and they're both 9, and we got into foster care because our biological son was born with a cleft lip and palate, and so from the very beginning, God just kind of changed our plan for family. And so then he just kind of impressed upon us to get into foster care and adoption.
That's awesome. So you have accidental twins too.
Yes.
Yeah, they're super fun, huh?
Yes.
Okay, and then Kayla,
Yes.
keeping going around.
Yes, I'm Kayla Crowe, and I'm married to Kevin. I work as a nurse practitioner, and I have 3 kiddos, 2 that are adopted and 1 that's biological. And we got into adoption just early on in our marriage. We knew adoption was just part of our hearts and something we wanted to do for the kingdom, and so we jumped right in adopting my middle daughter privately at birth, and then became a part of this story via foster care. And then we have our little girl who's 2. She's biologic. So we just did things a little backwards. We have a 2-year-old, a 7-year-old, and an 18-year-old.
Yeah, that's like just really spread out.
Yeah. It confuses
You
people.
will never be an empty nester.
Right. No.
Okay, and then Maddie.
I'm Maddie Hutson, and my husband is Jacob. We have 4 kids. We have 1 who's adopted, 3 who are biological. They are ages 7 months, 3, 5, and 12. And I am executive director of a nonprofit locally, and my husband works selling printers locally. So we got into adoption actually back when Ann Mythaler was founding The Call. We were best friends with her back in those days. And just watching her start, we'd always knew we wanted to adopt, but we didn't know what that looked like. And then as we started watching the foster families around us and the calls starting up, we knew that's what we wanted to do. So we became foster parents and part of this beautiful story.
That's so cool. And so, I mean, your nonprofit works a lot with kids from hard places too, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So you're just living this 24/7.
Yeah. I run the Teen Action and Support Center. And so we work with teens in Northwest Arkansas, whether that be some that are aging out of foster care. We help them find housing and stuff. So, yeah.
That's really cool. And then your husband sells printers. There's an office reference somewhere in there.
Yes.
Are they Sabre printers?
Yeah. No. They're Xerox printers.
Okay.
Total Document Solutions. Shout out. Yeah.
Well, yeah, they're probably safer than Sabre printers, right? No.
I think so. Yeah.
We have one, so
And she's not dead.
Yes.
There you go.
Yeah, that person speaking was Patty, our last mama here. Tell us about yourself.
I'm Patty, and my husband is Dwight. We have a golf store in Rogers, and Maddie's husband is our printer person. His printers are great.
Keeping it in the family.
And we have 2 kids that we adopted. They're twins. They're actual biological twins. And we have wanted to adopt for a while, and we were not able to have biological children, and so that gave us all the more motivation to adopt. When we got into foster care, we just came to realize too, like, what profound need there was for foster parents also. So we started off just fostering. We fostered several kids before we, joined this family and adopted our kids.
Yeah. Wow. That's really, really, it's just really cool how this has all worked out. And from my understanding, you all had pretty separate stories from the beginning, right? Mm-hmm. And then you all came together. So tell us about that. Did you know each other beforehand, or I don't know, how did this family come to be?
Well, Patty and I met through the case. I had James, the oldest, and Phoenix. They were our very first placements as foster placements. And then Patty
I had 3 of the kids at that time. The youngest, the twins, and then the oldest girl. And so Meg and I had almost... pretty much had a family.
We had siblings that then got adopted by these families. And so we met through that. I knew Kayla through church and through her husband.
From college. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, from college. Mm-hmm. And then you guys knew each other.
Yeah, so I met the 2 siblings that Meg had in her family, and just... we walked alongside them in prayer and hard stuff. And as things came to look like the kiddos weren't going to go home, and we realized there was a need and that they needed a place, we kind of prayed through it and said, maybe that's us. And so we stepped alongside Meg, and so Maddie and I's husbands worked together, and so that's how she kind of stepped in hearing the story.
Yeah, so they worked together at Boys and Girls Club for a long time, and actually Kyle worked there at the same time too, so all 3 of our husbands worked together at that time. And we by talking to them, and we'd heard some about the story, and we were already, planning on fostering and starting that process. And then when this situation came up and we heard there was a sibling who didn't have a place, all the rest had permanency except for one at the time. And so that's when we stepped in. Yeah.
Wow. And so you guys got pretty close pretty quick, right? So your kids were all still very connected.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys are pretty close now, right? Like you're
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like we started getting close really early on, before actually. So Meg and Patty had placements, but before Maddie and I ever had a child in our home from the family, we were kind of like on our knees in prayer through the entire end of the case together. And that's when we really bonded, I feel like. Just really, yeah.
I mean, the Crows and the Merediths were good friends before that, just because we were in the same circle of friends. But then there was that one night. I mean, you told that story kind of casually, but it was really like a momentous occasion because I think you guys were over for dinner or something. And we just kind of, in the middle of dinner, we're like, okay, we got to tell you guys something. Like, it's looking like Mom's not going to get the kids back. And we just feel like God is telling us that we're supposed to say no to the oldest, just because of our situation in life. And we felt like it was really important to do what was best for him. And we didn't feel like that was best for him to adopt him simply because he was already in our home. That wasn't what was best. And so we just said, I think we're going to adopt Phoenix, but we're not going to adopt James. And it's really breaking our hearts. It's really hard, but we feel like he needs to see us do the right thing. And we don't know what's going to happen, but we just know that we're supposed to say no. And they went home that night, and I don't know, maybe a week later or something, a couple days.
I remember. And I said, Meg told me this today, Kevin, and I think they're saying no so we can say yes. I think, and he was right on board. And so a week later, I called Meg. We went to lunch.
And that's really, I feel like, when the bond started, because, I mean, then they were kind of coming alongside our family, even before James knew that they were going to adopt them, even before we knew it was official. But it was just sort of, they were then a part of that story. And it was just really amazing to see God just put that together.
Yeah, like I have chills. That's really cool. And I love that you said their no meant your yes, because that's what I was thinking. I was like, I want to touch on that because I feel like as foster and adoptive parents, we have that pressure, and we feel like because that's what society or our culture or, people who don't know, they just look and they're like, oh, how could you ever say no to a child in need? And as foster parents, we know that that's not always what God has for us or for these kids. And so I think it's really cool that you guys, Meg, just listened to God in that, and then that allowed him to open the door for the Crows. That's just really cool. So,
we had something similar to that. Well, except we didn't know Maddie, but we had 3 of the kids, and one of them was Maddie's daughter. And through a variety of circumstances, knew that we were not going to adopt her. And I just remember when it was coming, close to the time where we were going to need to tell her, you're not going to be able to go back home. Also, we're not adopting you. I mean, just such heartbreaking news to need to reveal. I just remember being on my knees, like first thing in the morning, last thing at night, just constantly asking the Lord for a family. And then it was answered through not just like somebody random, but like somebody who's turned out to be, this really close friend. And it really creates this bond between us that we've parented the same child. So it was an answer to prayer, but it also, like, the bond was being formed before we even, knew each other.
Yeah, and you actually had Mariah twice throughout the case.
We had her first thing, and then we had her, then she had
quite a few placements.
And then we had her last before the Hutsons
and then she was able to transition to our home from their home, which was really neat to be able to, and just, it was a really, really good transition. I know.
I bet. That sounds really healthy, like that kind of transition, to be able to stay in her life. And I love what you said, that you parented the same child. Not many people can say that. I just think that's really, really neat. So, as far as parenting goes, have you guys been able to lean on each other to figure out how to parent these things, especially, you, Kayla, and you, Patty, to be able to call and say like, hey, when they were in your house, or whatever, how has that relationship been?
Well, Meg and I actually just had that conversation on the way down here. We weren't even really preparing for this, but she was talking about a problem she was having with Phoenix, and I said, hey, well, whenever you did this with James, like, how did that go, or how did that work? And so,
We kind of joke about like co-mothering, that we're all in the trenches together. And even though, they live in separate houses, we're all just kind of, praying for each other's kids and then giving advice on how to handle things, or just, just ideas that pop up from things that happened in your own home or whatever. And so we're all just kind of in this together.
We always have a group text going, the latest development, and we try to every month, every 2 months, we kind of have a session where we call in like, girls, we gotta get together at this house. So, which are some of our favorite times.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah. So.
That's really cool. And so, without going into too much detail about their stories, how helpful was it for you guys to be able to share that knowledge with each other? We know as adoptive moms that trauma presents itself differently for each kid, but kids who have shared similar traumas, I can imagine that was really helpful to be able to say, like, this is what we're experiencing. And that wasn't necessarily a broken trust because you guys were all going through the same things, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's been really interesting too. One of the most interesting things for me has been that each child has dealt with it differently. I mean, each child presents that trauma completely differently. And so it's not like we're dealing with the same issues or anything like that, but we're able to support one another because we can look into the other child's eyes, see those siblings, see those biological connections, and see where some of it came from and kind of track it a little bit more, I'd say. And so, leaning on one another has been, I don't know that I could have done it. I mean, there's no other words for it. I don't know that I could have done it without that, for sure.
I know during the case, it was helpful because, especially like when you guys came into the story, Kayla and Madi, that there were holes that we had to like fill in, and we were all kind of filling in those holes together of like, you had this information and you had this information, and nobody really quite had the full story of what they'd been through or what we were dealing with here. And so, and we're still doing that, I feel like, you're like, oh, I haven't heard that story before. And so in that way, it's great to have this like support system of like, nobody's judging anything that's being brought up. Nobody's, there's no judgment. And it's all just like, we're just helping each other fill in those gaps and do the best that we can. And then nobody else gets it. Like adopted parents get it, but especially like siblings, nobody else is going to understand the stories that I have to tell. Nobody else is going to understand the weirdness that's happening in my home, except for you guys. And so it's like a miracle to have this like built-in best friends that you can be like, okay, I can't tell anybody else in the world this. I'm going to tell y'all because this just happened.
Yes. That sounds awesome. So there are a lot of different dynamics here going on, and I want to talk about some different ones. So first of all, how valuable has you guys' family relationships been to your adopted kids? So like how has that helped their healing? How has that helped just to stay in contact with each other and not feel just that next layer of brokenness? They're all looking at each other. Yeah. Like, who wants to answer?
I was just thinking about whenever we were talking about kind of co-mothering, even that we kind of see each other as aunts to each other's, and so just having that close relationship's been wonderful. And even from the very beginning when James knew that we were adopting him, and kind of still walking alongside life beside the Merediths, that's where the first connection came in. Like, I know this one sibling's close by. And then as the story continued to develop, to see the security that brought the kiddos, and just knowing that their siblings were close, and that I feel like we made it pretty clear to them, like, this was just going to be our new normal. We were committed to keeping them together, however that looked like, with our big family, crazy family, but we just made it a priority from the beginning. And just it's wild when we all get together, and they all definitely have had to redefine what their relationships look like amongst each other because they're not in the same home, and they're all processing trauma differently, and their stories, work themselves out differently within each other. So, it just continues to grow and look different, but it's been wonderful for them.
And it's a way to honor who they are. Their lives didn't start when we adopted them or when they came into care or something. It's a way to honor their biological family and their ties. They know of some of the negative things, in the trauma, but this is a way to also just show them the goodness also that exists, in those relationships.
Well, and they have joint stories they tell when they get together. Yeah. Even if ones they just heard the other sibling tell because they were toddlers or babies. They still have these, especially the older ones, maybe not the babies so much, but the older ones have these joint stories and movies they watch together and situations because there were great things that happened in their life too, and so I feel like almost they're able to keep that piece of them because of their sibling relationships. So, and then the other thing is just leaning on each other with that. I know a lot of us have had things like hospital stays and kids who've been in different, institutions and all of this, and we've leaned on each other so much. I know for like me speaking that we probably wouldn't have been able to stay in this had it not been leaning on these families and doing it as a village because it would have been too hard. So,
I'm just sorry. I'm like processing all of that because it sounds, we think about these things and the way you guys are describing it, it sounds really, fun and happy and joyful. But then, Madi, I'm glad you touched on some of those darker parts and that we do need each other. And I think it's really, really unique that, as adoptive parents, we try to have our people that we can lean on. But you guys have each other, and it's like another level because you understand it deeply and intimately and fully. And it's not just hearsay. It's not just like, I'm going to try to help you understand this. You guys just do. You guys just do understand it. And
I'll say, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, even in touching on the hard stuff, there's been some really ugly, really hard stuff that we've had to deal with. But I'll just comment from having the oldest sibling, James, who's 18 now. He's an adult. And just the benefit that our relationship amongst the family has been able to have in processing through his story as the oldest. And as the oldest, me trying to be able to transfer this story to him to own. I mean, it is his, but for him to own and use for good, even as, say, Madi has walked through some really hard stuff with her daughter, I'm able to really be honest with James about that and process through that with him. So we're, at least he knows what healing processes are going on. And so he's even able to look at hurt that's been done and how his siblings are doing with working that out. And so just even that knowledge and this relationship amongst us helps him, I think, process. It allows me to better help him process, I think.
Yeah, and you guys are modeling that for them. So are they able to be there for each other through this hard stuff too? Or is it pretty much all through you guys?
I definitely say that they're able to be there, for each other. I know that we've had some hard times where James was the only person Mariah wanted to call, and where Phoenix was having a day and they were in the car together and Mariah was like, let me give you some advice. And as they've gone through these phases and stages, because we have seen, every time they get to a new developmental phase, they are processing that trauma differently through that phase. And so they can help each other through that. And they're around each other all the time. All of our kids are. And so they're able to grow up together. And especially because they have those similar stories, so they can kind of bounce it off of each other and also remember that it was real.
Yeah.
If you're the only one with that story, you start to doubt yourself. And so they can kind of bounce it off of, and like you said, process through it with the other, kids around. And I think it is. I think it's been really healthy for them to just, help each other too.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Wow. And it's been really like, picture redemption not because we redeemed these kids, but because, James has been on all sides of it, and the other day he was driving me home, which is weird because I think he was 11 when he started living at my house, and now he can drive me places, and he's 18. But he just asked me, he's driving the car, and he's like, who am I to you? Like when people ask, who do you tell them who I am? And I was kind of like, oh, okay, we're having a conversation. All right.
Like things just got deep.
And I just, like out of the clear blue, we're listening to like Justin Timberlake, and here we go.
And Meg's love language.
And so I was just like, I just tell people that you're family. And he's like, cool, me too. Me too. And, but it was just really sweet because we didn't always have this great relationship when he was living at my house because things were so tense during foster care, and I was kind of the bad guy. He never actually said that to me.
You were
but
the middle.
Yeah, I was just kind of the middle mom, and he obviously didn't want to be there, and that was okay. But now I get to be like the fun aunt, and I can tell that he loves me, but things have been redeemed since he lived at my house the first time, and it's just really cool just to watch the kids' relationships with all the aunts and the moms, and that this is just like this big weird story, but it's just the most amazing thing that's ever happened.
I think we've seen the same thing too with Mariah and Patty because there was a long time where Patty was like her mom before, and I was the intruder. And then it like became this transition, and we had to work really hard on what's appropriate, and how do we just navigate the whole situation. But now we've come to like a really healthy place where yes, I'm her mom, but Miss Patty knows probably more about her than most any other person on earth besides me. And so definitely like the closest aunt relationship ever, So.
Yeah, I noticed that even just in the last few days. I could see that she's getting to a healthier place where she can talk about that. And she even said, you remember when I was 5 and I did this? We have little throwback memories.
Yes. Remember when I asked you for high heels instead of a toothbrush?
Exactly.
I think it's funny that we're not aunts who spoil, though. We're aunts we're aunts who like use rad, parenting techniques. Like, I know things, and you may not lie to me. And we're never the aunt that enables a behavior.
No. We're always backing up what mom said. Like, oh, girl, whatever your mom said.
That's like ministering to my heart. Like, as a mom with a rad kid, I'm like, oh, can I be in your group?
We're like, hands off, don't touch that.
That's right. Don't be snowed over again.
Yes.
Whew, that sounds amazing. So let's move into some other dynamics. So I want to talk about, first of all, your husbands. Are they as close as you guys are?
I mean, they're close. They're men. So.
Right. I guess maybe I should preface this like, did they consider themselves like what sister wives or whatever?
I don't think they'd call themselves brother husbands.
One time.
That was a joke about the sister wives.
Jacob.
I do say that all the time, and my husband's like, I don't think you should say it that way, sister wives. And I'm like, no, it's funny. It's fine.
It's like the best, description of it. No, I think they're definitely close, but also I'd say I read a study once that women, when they're stressed, they group together. They have this relational things, and then men, when they're stressed, I mean, they do things together, but it's like, hey, let's go golfing, let's whatever. I'm not sure that they have the like deep level discussions that we do. So they're probably just as close as that looks like for me.
Right. Yes. They don't ever get together and have drinks on the deck. They keep the kids so that we can do that.
Yes. Understood. Okay, I got it. Okay, what about those of you that have bio siblings? What do they think of this just like crazy? Whatever you want to call it, man. This is like they're normal, I'm sure, but I mean, most siblings don't have this, so
I think there's good and bad, both, or I wouldn't even say good and bad, but good and hard. That everyone's had to deal with. My biological child is really young. She's 2.5 right now, and so she sees her older siblings as she doesn't know any different now. Mm-hmm. But as we've walked alongside it with my other daughter who's adopted, it's really cool just to see that we all have different stories and have come from different places and walked through that. But Meg, you have twins. Twinish. Biological.
Yeah, I mean, Jax kind of has his own hard story with the cleft lip and palate. So he kind of understands, like, he's not from a hard place, but his life has been hard.
Yeah.
And so he, like, it's never really affected him in a negative way, or it's never really scared him. Some of the things that Phoenix deals with those are hard for him. He kind of wants her to be different. She's not quite his equal, even though they're 9, but they're really, they're good pals. And James lived with us for so long that, he just sees James as like a cousin, like older brothers still, and so they're still really close. And really everybody, the other night at Christmas, it was just like a bunch of cousins in the room. It was chaos and it was fun. And it was just it was fun because they're all just going to grow up together, and they really do seem like they're family.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, with ours, Amos was 9 months old whenever we started fostering, when we brought Mariah in. And so that's just all he's ever known.
Yeah.
I mean, he just considers all of their biological siblings and adoptive siblings as part of his family. So there hasn't really, but of course there's, like she said, there's the hard things. I mean, and I don't want to, sugarcoat any of that, my biological, sons, they've grown up with someone else's trauma in their home.
Yeah.
And there's just no easy way around that. While I think that, I think that they'll be better for it and all of that. Yes. But there is definitely that fallout, in that they don't really know what normal looks like. And so they have had some behaviors that have reflected that, so there's that side too, especially whenever they're younger and you bring in an older child. We've seen some of that. Because Mariah was 7 when she moved with us, 5 when she moved in with you. And, but as far as the other, all the kids together, they consider themselves family. They don't even see anything different, I don't think.
I think that's really cool. So I asked that question because I didn't know if it was like, the bio siblings were kind of on the side, and then like the communal sibling group was grouped together. If it was just like a bunch of kids going crazy.
Mess.
Yeah. I think maybe early on it felt that way. It was kind of like we were just getting the brown kids together, and the other kids were there kind of on the peripherals, but it's not that way anymore. They're all in one big pot now.
I think they divide more naturally now, like by ages and
or boys
and things
and girls,
like that. Boys and girls. It's much more natural, like what you'd see with a group of cousins.
Yeah.
And our focus early on was getting the adoptive siblings together. That was so much our focus. And then the more our family just became closer, it was like, no, we're just getting the families together, not necessarily these siblings. So.
Yeah.
Well, because then the other kids would get mad. I mean, if Amos missed out on my biological son, if he missed out on hanging out with Xavier and Geneva and Mariah got to go, he would be very upset. Like, that would not be something he'd be okay with. So
sometimes I wonder if when they're like 16 and they actually find out that we're not actually related, they might be like disappointed or shocked. Because I really do think that they just think they're related. You guys really are.
Yeah. So we have conversations about it every day.
Well, and we all say that too, that I was telling Mariah the other day that if, about dating a boy, well, he's going to have a hard thing, because she's like, am I going to have to get approval from all the dads? And I was like, yep.
Yes.
And the moms.
Yes. Start working on it now.
That feels like throwing someone to the wolves. Right? To bring anyone home. Be like, here is my family.
You have to pass the test. Yeah.
Wow, that's intimidating. You guys, I hope you're really enjoying this episode. It was so much fun to record, and these girls are awesome. I wanted to cut in here and just remind you guys that today, as of this recording, the day that it comes out, is the last day that you can get a free sensory gift guide from my occupational therapist friend when you sign up for my email list. That's at theadoptivemompodcast.com/email. Super easy. You can do it right now on your phone. Super easy. And you get a free sensory gift guide when you do it. In addition to all that, today's the last day to be entered to win one of the gifts from the guide. It's awesome. And even though it's after Christmas, our kids always need good sensory toys, good sensory tools, and they're going to help our kids be able to just live their best life. So definitely go sign up for that now. And you're going to get a note from me every week and the episode right in your inbox. Easy peasy. Okay, I think that's it. Let's jump back into the episode. That provides a good segue for my next thing that I wanted to go into. I know that you guys get together and you have like your own holidays and stuff. So I want to know, what does that look like? But also, how did it start? Like, what was the first get together like? And what do you like? Is it just normal now, or what does that look like?
Yeah, I'd say the very first was once we kind of put together this story. It was even pre-adoption.
Yeah,
like once all the
girls clubbed up.
Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
We just piled us all together, and
Do you guys like rent an event center?
we did. The first
that
gathering
time.
was now Sunday. We just had our Christmas gathering at my house, which was wild and crazy.
It was amazing.
And we try to be outside whenever we can.
Yes.
But it was cold, so that didn't happen. But we, anytime the kiddos have birthday parties, we try to prioritize that, and whoever can come really tries to make it. And what else?
Just this year, I was saying, I was telling Jacob, I was like, at some point we might need to start inviting Amos's like classmates or friends to his parties, but all he does is have birthday parties with the family. So we've never had to.
Yeah, but we always have Christmas and normally birthdays.
Christmas and birthdays are the
sure.
most.
And I don't even remember it being like an agreement we made. It was just sort of like that one Thanksgiving we started, and it was just sort of like we just kind of knew that this was something we wanted to do.
Right.
If we were all going to do this together and adopt these siblings, then of course we would want to just start our own kind of traditions and keep them going so the kids could see each other as much as possible. And
We just see each other so often.
Yeah.
I mean, one of us will babysit, like we'll watch the other's kids if they have a date, or just. I mean, I feel like I see at least one of you once a week. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
It just kind of flows.
and now James can babysit.
Yeah, exactly.
It's amazing.
Or he'll cut hair, or I don't know. It's kind of like it's everywhere. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So, do you guys see them taking ownership over these relationships in the future and continuing it on, or how do you guys see this going? Because I mean, you even said James is an adult now. So, how do you see this happening?
Want to
in the
answer
near
that
future?
first?
Yeah.
It's a good question.
How do I see him own? Yeah. It's been really, really cool to see James just come in and start owning this really big, crazy story, which is just praiseworthy. I don't know. It's miraculous, and I just love it, and trying to see him use it for good in his own words. And so I foresee our big, he loves our big family. Like you said, your Aunt May, and he just loves checking up on the twins and Mariah and everything. So I foresee him just continuing to check back in on them all the time and make an active part to see them. And
Yeah, I definitely do too. I think about, the future sometimes and think like, if one of them couldn't go home for Christmas, like they would definitely come to our house. It would be, we'd be, we're family too, if they would, for whatever reason. And I love the ways that we can cultivate that. Like James cuts hair and he cuts my son's hair, and sometimes they babysit, and I get teary when he comes to babysit, because I think like this is one of the things they would do if they were together still. And so I love that we can find different ways, for the individual relationships, to the ways that we can nurture those. And I definitely think that they'll continue to grow as they're as they're adults. And
Yeah. Well, and as you have the youngest of the bigger sibling group, right? So, you guys have almost given them an opportunity to be the big siblings, because you guys have some younger ones, right?
Right.
Like, I know you do too, Maddie, right? Yeah.
yeah.
That's really, really cool. So, I want to ask you guys some of these just questions about, your individual stories, but also just how it relates with each other. So I'll start with you, Meg. What do you wish someone had told you at the beginning of this journey?
Let me get out the list. I think the hardest piece for me, that's just an ongoing thing, and I think any adoptive parent would agree, is just the trauma piece. That I don't think any training or book can fully prepare you for what that looks like in your own home. And what that brings up in your own self, and what you're going to have to deal with, your own baggage. And sometimes parenting, you can think you have it all figured out, and you have a formula and you have a structure and all this stuff, and then you have a kid like this come into your home and everything is out the window.
Yeah.
And you have absolutely no idea what to do, and you're at your wit's end. And so I I don't know how someone would have told me that, but I wish that I would have been better prepared for what that was going to look like, because unearthing my stuff has taken way too long is kind of what I'm saying. I wish that I was better prepared so that I was a better therapeutic parent from the beginning. I would have done everything differently with James. I would have done everything differently with all the other foster kids I had, but I wasn't done processing my own because I didn't know I had it yet, you know? And so I think that's me.
Oh, girl, that's some good stuff though. Like that's real.
Yeah.
For me too. Yeah. What about you, Kayla?
Oh gosh. That for sure.
Everyone just piggybacks.
Ditto.
on
Yeah,
Ditto.
I don't really know what else to add to that other than, yeah, gosh. I'm not going to say our adoption journey has been easy, but we have not dealt with some of the more like severe, traumatic, things. And so a lot of what I got coming into adoption was a lot of negative things that people said to me, and which is all true. All of your worst fears can happen and things like that. But I also want to just see more hope around it as well. Like, you're going to step into it and it's going to be ugly and it's not going to be perfect. But if God's calling you to it, like every day, you just got to step out, and especially alongside community. Like, I'm so glad we fell into it. And I think if you're stepping into the adoption world, like having solid community alongside you is key. But,
Yeah. Bet you, Maddie.
Well, yes, ditto, definitely all those. I think we'll all say that. But I think one of the key turning points for me was when and maybe not everybody agrees with this, but for me, I wish somebody would have told me that adoption was so much more like marriage than it is parenting.
Yeah.
Like, I felt like a failure as a parent over and over and over and over again because I wasn't feeling the right feelings, and it wasn't working the way that I thought it should, or that maybe I'm not bonding, or maybe I'm not, whatever. And with parenting, you're supposed to have this unconditional love as a parent. Well, that's not necessarily, the case with marriage. You there are times when you don't like that person, but you choose them over and over again every day.
Yeah,
that's especially with older child adoption. That's what I would say. That's been more the experience for me, where I can look at this child and be like, I don't like anything about you right now. Like, not even one thing, but I choose you again. I choose you today, and I'll choose you tomorrow, and I choose you over and over. And so I feel like I could have been more prepared if somebody would have made that parallel, because for so long, I felt like I was doing everything wrong without that. So that would be what I would say. Adoption is more like marriage than parenting.
Yeah, I like that because you definitely, you guys have talked about the phrase new normal. And I feel like that is totally with adoptive parenting. It doesn't always feel like biological parenting. And I think we feel like we're failing because it doesn't look like we think it's supposed to look. But you're so right. And choosing to love them in a different way than that just mothering, nurturing love all the time. We are loving them in the way that they need. So I like that a lot. All right, Miss Patty. Or I'm sorry, what is it? Sister Patricia?
Thank you. I have so many of the same thoughts that Meg expressed, and I've thought so much of, I wish that I'd known this, but also there's no way that I could know this until I was in it.
Yeah.
So even when I've reviewed things, like Meg and I have trained foster parents, and I've read this material and thought, well, somebody taught me that, but I didn't get it at all. Until I was in it. So there are things that I wish I'd known, but I know that I really couldn't have learned them until I was experiencing those things. And one of the things that I came across when I was, reading all these parenting books, like, what am I supposed to be doing here? Is the idea that you can see children from hard places or with trauma backgrounds as a gift, because they're going to bring you to a place where you have to deal with your own trauma and your own baggage, and you can be free from that and then help them become free from that as well. And that's something that has been like really hopeful for me, as I face like things in myself that I don't want to see. Like, well, it is coming out, and if it can come out of me, I can help them. Therapeutically, I can help them. Live freer and not in bondage to this kind of trauma. And I didn't think I even had trauma in my life until, or any big problems until I started parenting some kids from trauma. And also, I think something that I wish I'd known also, and I'm sure someone told me this, is trauma. Adoption is always preceded by trauma. There's no case where a kid is, comes like with a clean slate or blank slate because there's been a broken relationship that wasn't really meant to be, it wasn't designed to be broken.
Yeah.
So even if it is some sort of a best case scenario and it's all very loving, there's still the trauma because there's a deep, deep loss there. And I wish I'd known that, but I don't really fault anyone for not telling me that.
Yeah. I think that, adoption is beautiful, but something had to be broken first. And I think that ignoring that pain only elongates that trauma,
Right.
only keeps it going. And I think that our kids really benefit from us acknowledging it up front almost and saying, hey, I know that this isn't just like, well, we're your family now and everything's great, right? That doesn't help anyone. So, and I feel like, as parents of biological kids, we don't really know how selfish we are until we have kids. And I think that with parenting adoptive kids, we don't really know how much like we have to work out within ourselves until that happens too. So God just has awesome ways of refining us. Okay, so here I usually ask people what their favorite way that their tribe supported them is, but you guys are kind of each other's tribe. So my question is, what is your favorite thing about your extended family here? And we're just going to keep going around the circle. So Meg, we'll start with you.
Well, I don't want to say it if someone else is going to say it.
Just ditto yours as well.
Go ahead.
But I think we mentioned before, just kind of like whenever we hit this brick wall of like parenting or life is too much or whatever, we all just kind of group text each other and we're like, all right, who's ready for the deck? And so we kind of just get together and have a glass of wine on the back deck and like laugh and cry and solve all the problems together. And we call it drinks on the deck. And so, it's kind of like an SOS every once in a while, or sometimes it's just like it's been too long and we miss each other, but you really do have like built-in best friends and the people that get it, and then we can laugh and cry and pray and drink.
Amen.
I would just, ditto all of that. I mean, we obviously care about our kiddos a whole lot, but from a selfish perspective, I have like relationships in my adult life that I never expected with these women. And we've had deep, hard stuff, and just being able to be 100% real with each other. And it's just something I never expected. And it's so rich.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I never expected to be Aunt May May either. I mean, I think that's my favorite too.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know if you guys know this, but May May started with you guys. Like, then it trickled out to my actual biological family and extended family. Now everybody calls me Aunt May May, but it started here. Like James, I think James and Olivia started May May, or
I don't remember,
because it was like, what do we call you now?
Right.
You know, like, who are you? We don't know. May May.
Yeah,
I love that.
I think for me, definitely these girls are my favorite. And there's been days. We've had a tough road. And there's been days where I've been like, this has been so hard. And if in the end, like if I can just cling to these relationships right here, then all of this is worth it. And like actually the year before we came into adoption, I went through this season where 3 of my best friends had moved away and I didn't know why. I was really kind of at a loss and didn't have any close friends at all. And I was praying, God, I really desire girl friendships. And because I'd never had deep girl friendships before, really. And I was praying for that and I had no idea. Even when we went into adoption, I had no idea, like you said, that this would be what I would come out with. But I mean, these girls have literally saved my life on occasion. And there's nothing I would trade for this at all.
There's something poetic about 3 people moving away.
Yeah.
And 3 people coming in.
It's like he planned it.
Yeah.
Almost. Yeah.
It's like he knows what he's
pretty
doing.
smart, I guess.
All right, Patty.
We talked about how we started getting together in order to get the kids together. And I remember the first time that we went out to lunch, and I thought, like, this is fun. Like, we don't need the kids to get together. Like, this is the beginning of something good here. You know, like, I really have liked these people and appreciate them. And over time, those relationships have just grown so much. And I just am, like, so grateful. And I even think about, like, friendships that I've had before, and if people move or whatever, you know, things happen. I just tend to lose track of people. And, like, well, they were a friend for a while. They're not anymore. And the Lord just built in, like, permanency here, you know, like, if I space out for a while, like, they're still here, you know, we'll just rebuild and reconnect and keep going. And I just really am so grateful to have, like, I just see it, you know, it's another branch of our family. And I can't even imagine, you know, anything better. I'm just so grateful.
Even my family my family I grew up with, my mom, my dad, my mom calls Patty her daughter now. Like, she's like, she's just brought her into the regular
Sweet.
family.
Yeah.
And so, and then I wanted to mention one more thing that is my favorite. And we have had sometimes, and really Patty's the one that always calls us to the mat with praying. Like, she's always the one who brings us together when we're facing something hard. She's like, we need to pray. I mean, we have spent countless hours. I mean, remember walking around the DHS office praying for our caseworkers, like praying for the kids, praying for situations to work out, pleading with the Lord for answers, for parenting strategies, for all kinds of things. I mean, and I just, the richness that has brought to my life, and the breakthroughs that it's brought for our kids, I can't even, put into words, but prayer has been one of the things that has held these relationships together for sure.
Wow.
Yeah, I think back to those times. That was like some of our earliest days together, and we were praying over some really hard stuff. It's crazy that we came into that so quickly, and like it was,
I remember one of the very first court hearings. Somehow I already had Patty's number and some of the other foster parents that had other siblings, and we were texting, and Patty was like, does anybody want to get together and pray before court? And I was like, I like this girl. We're going to be friends. And then ever since, we would get together before every court hearing, and we would pray on that little picnic table outside Melvin Ford. And we would just pray over everything, bio mom and the kids and the outcome and everything. And we prayed and prayed and prayed. And even to this day, if somebody throws up a SOS or a code word, it's like, we know that we're all going to drop what we're doing, like right there in the car, in our house, cooking dinner, whatever, and just pray for each other, because sometimes it literally is life and death.
Literally. And sometimes for me, I feel like almost like indebted to them all, because the level of love, like, I can never pay it back. I mean, I can never pay back people who, when I have a hard day, come over and bring their kids and let them sleep on the couch and bring me my favorite meal and do my dishes, or ones who just don't know what to do. And so they just bring me a Slurpee from the easy part, and we laugh on the front porch about it, And
She's pointing to Kayla.
Yes, that
I
happened.
just knocked on the door one day. I was like, here's a coolie, a cherry coolie. I don't know what else you need.
And just being able to, like, even when, when your husband's been gone, Meg, being able to lean on each other for, lean on James to mow the lawn, and to, like, just the leaning on each other. There's just, I don't know.
My husband's in the Army. That's what she's referring to. He's gone a lot.
Oh, I'm sorry.
He's still around.
Yes.
So,
Apologize.
No, it's fine.
It was good that you guys know how to clarify, because people can't see us right now. Okay, so I didn't plan this, but the things that you guys have said just in this last answer made me curious, because I know that for me and several of my adoptive mom friends, we tend to, when life just gets to be way too much, we tend to withdraw and just kind of feel like, this is too much. I don't even know how to talk to anyone. I don't know that they'll understand. And it sounds, correct me if I'm wrong, that you guys kind of pull each other out of that, right? Like, you don't let each other go down. So talk about that for a second.
I mean, we go down. But I mean, I remember, situations where, I mean, Kayla has come to my house and knocked down the door and said, we're going to talk. You are in a dark place and we're going to talk. And I think we've all done that with each other at one point or the other, because, and it's all come down to, like, the kids bring us together, and it comes down to, like, hey, we can't go there, like, because we have these kids, and we need to be parents for them, and we need to, and not just our adoptive kids, but all of our kids. And I think that has been, we almost have like a vested interest. We have a vested interest in each other being successful. And so, I mean, that sounds a little selfish, but it's true. Like, I can't have Kayla going down because
I can't take your kids.
I can't.
I need you to parent.
Yes. And so
One wheel goes out, the whole car is off.
I mean, it's for real. We're really our family. We really do lean on each other. And if one of the strings goes, I mean, I feel like all of us would. And so,
but I think too, we understand it and we get it. And those are like very real feelings, and they're okay as far as like their reality, you know, and it's okay that you're feeling that way, or it's okay that this is hard and everything is hard and it's always hard and it never stops being hard. And why is it hard? And so I think that, like, we're able to pull each other out because we're like, I'm not going to tell you that you can't feel that way. I'm not going to tell you that that's not real. Because sometimes people, when you tell them that things are really hard, they're like, oh, you don't need to feel that way.
Yeah, I'm sure it's going to get
okay. And we're going to be like, no, that is the worst. And we're going to sit with you in that for a little while, and then let's get some help and let's keep moving because we need you. So I think that helps. And it helps me pull out of it just personally, just to be like, no, that's okay. You can feel that way. That's real.
It's beautiful. That just sounds amazing. Okay, so last question here. And it's, what is your biggest piece of advice or encouragement to families in similar situations? So I want you guys to answer this for the moms who maybe they know that there are other siblings out there, or, you know, maybe they're scared. Maybe it's like, I don't want to expose my kid to that trauma again, or I don't want to remind them, or I don't want to be reminded that our family has been put together and, you know, pasted together from brokenness. What would you say to those people who don't even know where to start?
I heard something today. This isn't fully formed, so I apologize. But I heard something today that therapy is experiencing old hurts with new outcomes. And I think that this is what this is. This is like group therapy for us, but it's also that for the kids. And I think that therapy comes in many, many forms. And so sometimes you have to go back in order to go forward. And you have to experience the old hurts in some form or fashion, whether it's privately and personally, or it's with a person. You have to experience that. You have to go back and experience that in order to experience a new reality and a new outcome. And so it is super scary, I think. I think about if you know there's siblings out there somewhere, or bio family out there somewhere, and you have no idea what they're like, that's a whole lot scarier than what we're doing, because we're all together and we're handling this together, and it's not scary. But at the same time, like, what our kids are having to go through, even inside our safe homes, is still that therapy, is still going back in order to go forward.
Yeah.
And so I think that it's a part of the healing. It's a part of their DNA. It's a part of who they are. And so eventually, somehow, they're going to have to go through it.
Well, and I think we've seen, I mean, you guys know that we've had seasons with Mariah where being around the siblings was very activating for her trauma. We knew that we would be paying for it for a long time, for days and days and sometimes weeks, every time she saw one of her siblings. And there's even been therapists who said, you know, I'm not sure, you know, like, let's have this space, or let's take a break. And we've done that.
Yes.
You know, we've done that at times when it was necessary.
It's not always super close.
Yeah,
you
no,
know, it's
it
not
doesn't
always
have to be.
been able to be that way.
Because they did have those histories together, some of them worse than others, you know, where it became problematic at times. So we don't want to gloss over any of that. That's very real, but we all stuck with it. And we can see now, you know, 5 years later, that it was definitely worth it, because now she's able to have those relationships and not be, we see very little triggered kind of reactions from when she's around her siblings, and she's able to have what I'd consider, while like before they might, her relationships with them might not have been very healthy or normal, but now she's able to kind of rewrite, like you said, she's able to rewrite those relationships and redo them. And I think it's been incredibly healing for her. I'm not sure she would have been to the level of healing she's at without that.
Yeah, I feel like you guys keep, just pulling those words out of my mouth, because as you're talking, I'm just like, healing. That just sounds like healing. And to be able to provide that for your kids is, it's incredibly valuable. And, but Kayla and Patty, what about you guys?
I'll just speak like from the parent side of it, just anyone who's maybe fearful of those relationships. Before we started on this adoption journey, we adopted my other daughter at birth, and we have a really close relationship with her biological mother, which was something we didn't know how to handle. And it kind of helped me through this navigation too, is both situations are messy. They're not perfect, and we don't know how to handle them. And we just said, God, like, we don't know how to do this. But one of the things I just kept coming back to is like Jesus specialized in the messy situations and the hard. And so we just trust him to navigate our steps that way. If ultimately this is what's best for the kiddos and for redemption and healing and all those things. And we just trust him to navigate our steps in it every single day. And you don't have to have all the answers about how it's going to work out. And it's going to look different every day. Just like we said, sometimes our relationships among the siblings have been closer than they are at other times. But ultimately, I think God navigates that. So,
And I think it comes down to the fact that it's worth it. It's something worth doing. And so, even if it's messy and hard, and we don't always do it right either. We definitely mess up, but it's something that's worth doing.
I think too, it speaks to the children, and it says, who you are and who your connections are, they matter to me. So if you're willing to seek that out, and you may seek it out and find you can't have a close relationship, maybe you can't have a relationship at all, but if there's something that you can do to bring some kind of contact, or there's some kind of a connection that speaks to your children that this life of yours matters to me, and if we can do this, I want to do this. I'm not scared of what if you like them better, or you want to go here. Kids are going to have conflicting feelings too, and that's okay. And you've got to be ready to kind of navigate through that with kids too, and allow them to feel those things. But I think it's really validating to the kids to say, I want this for you. Yeah. So I'm going to take this risk and go out there.
I'm uncomfortable.
Good stuff, ladies. Seriously, that I just think it's, I don't know, it's beautiful what you guys are doing, and I know that I've said that multiple times, but I stand by it. It's it's really, really cool, and I'm really excited that you guys were willing to do this and sit down and talk about this not normal at all relationship, but one that's really neat to hear about. So thank you guys so much.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. Thank you for listening to the Adoptive Mom Podcast. I know this stuff is hard, and I hope you found encouragement here. Remember, you are enough, and you're doing a great job. God wants to be at the center of this journey, and he is big enough to redeem all of our mistakes. Don't forget to check out show notes and other resources at theadoptivemompodcast.com. Thanks again for listening.